Good evening. Welcome back to the RMB Radio News Report. The first duty of all citizens of the United States is to know your history. I know the subject of history can be boring to some people. It happens to be a subject that I have most of my life been very interested in. And there was somebody wiser than me that said that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And it's absolutely true. If you don't know history, then you are just an ignorant fool wandering around with nowhere to go and no knowledge to get there. You don't have to be a scholar of history, but if you don't know history, and you also do not have to be highly educated. Some people that went through the 7th grade and then dropped out somehow for some reason, later in life turn out to be, scholars. But there are 4 documents, historical documents, which were part of the molding, creating of this country that we call the United States. And first off, to dispel now let me define. To me, what I'm talking about, there are 2 polarized political movements in the United States. Those who are on the right, they are the conservatives, the traditional American values and people. That's me. That's who I identify with. And then you've got on the left, you've got the leftists. So I use very simple terms that everybody should by now understand. If you are a conscious, thinking American individual walking the streets, whether you wash dishes for a living or whether you're an attorney, you should be able to understand those 2 terms. If not, you're just a babbling fool, and you might as well tune away now because you're not going to understand a word I'm saying. But if you do understand, if you're not a walking idiot, then listen carefully, because the leftists are very unique people. Okay, they will call themselves, sometimes they call themselves socialists. Sometimes, if they're brave enough, they do. Some people even flat out tell you they're a Marxist or a Leninist or a Stalinist. Those are all terms for a generic word known as communists. Now, communists are the strict enemies of liberty and freedom. You should understand that if you have lived in this world, for any significant amount of time. Now, much of this you are not going to learn in regular grade school, high school, college. You're going to, because you are being taught by leftist teachers. And the interesting thing, people can say, well, how is it that the leftists, have so successfully infiltrated the education of our society, the educational institutions of our society? Well, if you go back to Marx himself, in his documents, his instructions to his followers, he taught them to infiltrate the educational institutions of a society that they want to overthrow. This is well known for anybody who has studied Karl Marx himself, his life, his documents, his instructions to his followers. They have infiltrated on all levels, all the way from kindergarten, all the way up to the universities. Okay, they are there. And they are using that fertile ground of especially a university. They're using that fertile ground to grow new Marxists. Think of it like that, like a farmer, and that's exactly what they're doing. So, now, and it has been for 20 or 30 years now, they even want to get a hold of your children at when you first bring them into kindergarten. They want to start them at that level. So you, the citizen, the parents of your children, you have to take charge. First off, you have to be vocal in your protests against what they're trying to teach you. Now, if you go to the local school and say, look, what kind of Marxist nonsense or environmental nonsense are you trying to teach my children? Well, they're going to counter that by saying, well, it's dictated to us by the state, what we have to teach. All they're doing is passing the buck. First thing you have to understand is on the local level, the so-called Board of Education, many of whom are elected officials. They have very little actual control over what is taught your child. And yes, it is true that the state dictates on a state level a certain curriculum. So that is true, but you have to start somewhere. You have to vocalize your objection. You can't just sit back and be passive, individuals. Unfortunately, the Jewish population in Germany found out that was not, successful. Go along to get along does not work, because they're trying to get to your children at a very early age. Some of them are actual deviants. Some are, just simply political, indoctrinated quacks themselves. But what I've started out, so now that we understand the two aspects of what I'm talking about, the leftists, now they sometimes will call themselves progressives or liberal. Those are words that are deceptive in themselves, because when you think of the word liberal and what it means, I use the word liberation, but the modern form of the word liberal has nothing to do with liberation. It actually, in fact, has very much to do with enslavement. If you think about, the liberals want to impose more restrictions and government control over our lives in every aspect of our society, in every aspect of our lives. You have to go back. Before I progress to the 4 documents essential for everybody to know, let me further clarify that the leftists, what they want to do, there are 4 documents that make up everything that we should know. The essential things that we should know are contained within 4 documents that our founding fathers, the creators of this republic, this America, those 4 documents are the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution of the United States, which also includes the Bill of Rights. Now, I'm including the Bill of Rights as a separate document, but it is in fact part of the Constitution itself. But I refer to it because the first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, is like a contract between we the citizens and those who we elect into office. Those who are elected into office must swear to uphold, protect, and preserve the Constitution of the United States. But the left, when they get into office, spend most of their time trying to learn to circumvent the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, so they do not support it. Personally, I think if a person, it should be like a blood oath. You violate the oath, we cut off your head. If I had my way, that's exactly what would happen, because these 4 documents, that the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights, that was presented to us, preserved for us, and presented to us by the Founding Fathers, many of whom died and fighting for this United States. So like I said, I think it is the first duty of every citizen to know your history, and why our society is at threat. You have to go back to those 4 documents, especially the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, including the Bill of Rights. Now, the Articles of Confederation was sort of like an early form of the Constitution. It's excellent to read that, to know it, to understand it, but it has basically been, replaced by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which were far more complete. Know those documents, preserve them. They should be considered to be chiseled in stone. Now, the leftists of today want to convince you that these this Constitution and the Bill of Rights is outdated. In other words, they want to replace it with, so point being, the Founding Fathers preserved this for us. This is a contract between the citizens and those elected to run the government. Okay? You should never compromise, not with one, not with two, because if you compromise with one of those Bill of Rights and say, well, in the interest of the safety of the population, we'll compromise, we'll let that Constitution elapse. If you permit that one time, then you have opened the door for them to come back 6 months later, a year later, 5 years later, and say, well, this whole free, and what I'm referring to is the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights, which guarantees the population the right to own and bear firearms. If you don't understand, you've got to read the Bill of Rights, and you've got to understand and comprehend what that means. And you must be willing to never compromise. Never. And if so, one of the elected officials does compromise or even suggests a compromise on the Bill of Rights, then that individual should be run out of office and run out of town at the threat of being tarred and feathered, in my opinion. Because by doing so, they have violated their oath and obligation to preserve and protect the Constitution, which includes the Bill of Rights. So if they come forward and say, well, we've got to put restrictions on this gun thing, what they're talking about is gun control. If they can strip you of the ability to, by force, if necessary, preserve your constitutional rights, then they will do so. They are leftists. Okay? Don't fall for that nonsense that they are trying to feed now, which says, well, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is created by a bunch of old white men 200 years ago. Yes, that might be true. However, it's chiseled in stone because it's as meaningful today as it was 200 years ago. The only difference is 200 years ago, the threat to liberty was by the British. But today, the threat to liberty is by the leftists. And they are in every aspect. Some of them even run for Republican, as we're on the Republican ticket. Some run for the Democrat ticket. So you can't say, well, this individual is a Republican, so therefore we're all safe. No, you're not safe. Because you ever heard the story about the wolf in sheep's clothing? Well, they change their hat on a regular basis. Some of them run for political office as Republicans simply because their major constituency in their district might be predominantly Republican. Okay, so they're fooling you. That's what they're trying to do. That's what they specialize in. Marx himself instructed his people on how to deceive the population of ignorant and uneducated people in Russia and throughout Europe. And they're trying to do the same in the United States today. 4 documents: the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights. Never compromise on those, and you'll be fine. Learn from history. History teaches us the things that we should know to preserve our liberties and freedoms. We'll be right back after this commercial break. We got to get out there and make a little bit more money. Thank you.